So before I get started, I just want to give a brief background as to who I am in terms of my qualifications and experience. So I studied a sport and exercise science degree at Liverpool John Muir's. I then went on to study a sport nutrition masters, again at Liverpool John Muir's. And throughout my time studying the sport nutrition masters, I undertook some work with Everton Football Club. So I worked with the under 12s right up until the under 23s. I've since came home. I've also undertook some work with the Irish Football Association, but the main sport I work in would be combat sport, and in particular boxing. So I work with Alexa Sean McComb, who's a good friend of mine. He's probably one of the biggest prospects in Ireland at the minute. Also work with Paddy Barnes, as Julian had mentioned, who's 2 times bronze medalist in the Olympic Games. And I also work with Tyrone McKenna and Tyrone McCullough, who both recently fought in the semi-final of the Golden Contract Tournament, with Tyrone McKenna progressing on to the final. So what I do with these lads daily is basically educate them on the importance of nutrition. So how they can use nutrition to optimize their performance in the gym, to optimize recovery, to enhance the adaptations they get to training, but most importantly, how can they use nutrition to optimize their health? Because if they're healthy, they're able to train and then they're able to get better. So like we touched on at the start, due to the current lockdown, this has resulted in the closure of gyms. And this is leaving the majority of us without a place to train. So we're not able to keep as active as what we normally would outside of the self-isolation. But because the gyms are closed, this doesn't necessarily need to mean we are completely inactive. So per government advice, we're still able to get outside and exercise once per day. So I would encourage everyone to use this time wisely. And this could even mean going a run, so a jog, doing some sprint work, or if you've got any pets, that's a good excuse to take them a walk just to get the activity levels up. Or even in and around the house, we can do some body weight exercises. I know on the Ulster Boxing Facebook page, some of their members of staff have been putting up demonstrations on different exercises that we can do in and around the house. So I would encourage everyone to go on and have a look at those exercises. And I'm sure the majority of you are aware of Tyson Fury, and following his win against Vladimir Klitschko for the world heavyweight title, there was a period of inactivity where he put on a lot of weight. Now, I know Tyson Fury came with his own mental health issues during this time, but in terms of his body composition perspective, you can clearly see that the amount of weight that he gained compared to what he usually weighs in on fight night. And there's no doubt if Tyson Fury didn't have any underlying health conditions then, he was certainly on his way to developing a number of underlying health conditions down the line. So again, just another example of why it's really, really important that we're keeping as active as possible during this time and on top of our nutrition. And it's actually been shown that even just 1 hour of physical activity can eliminate the detrimental effects that come with 8 hours of inactivity. So sitting for more than 8 hours a day and with no additional physical activity is actually similar to that of smoking and obesity in terms of mortality risk. So in terms of your risk of dying. And this study was done in 2016 and it included over 1 million men and women, and it couldn't be more relevant than it is today. And because during self-isolation, people tend to be sitting about for long periods at a time. But this study just goes to show that even if we get out and do 60 to 75 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, that can actually eliminate the increased mortality risks that are associated with total sitting time. So we've talked about the consequences that come with inactivity and the importance of keeping on top of our training and keeping on top of our diet. The first thing we need to do, and probably the most important, is structure our environment in a way that's aligned with our goals. And our environment will be the home environment because that's where we're being asked to spend the majority of our time. And that's where a lot of people kind of go off track because within the house, there's a lot of temptations. And especially after the Easter period, there's a lot of chocolate, there's a lot of Easter eggs, and people tend to eat out of boredom. So what I would recommend is even getting rid of any sweets or chocolate or anything that's going to come in between you and you achieving your goals. And even something as simple as getting rid of the sweets and chocolate and swapping that for a fruit basket and making sure the fruit and veg is on display, because it's going to be a simple nudge and a simple reminder that you need to keep on top of your fruit and veg that day. And also making sure that our fridge and cupboards and our freezer is stacked up with healthy, nutritious choices. So when it comes to our weekly or bi-weekly shopping, we need to make sure that we're including the foods that you can see on the screen. So it's things like chicken, turkey, steaks, your different types of fish, so your tuna, your salmon, your mackerel, also fruit and veg. And a simple tip when it comes to fruit and veg is to stack up on frozen fruit and veg because that's just as nutritious as fresh veg and it actually lasts for longer. Also, eggs, dairy product, so your milks and your yogurt, and also your nuts and your seeds. So if you're getting these types of foods as part of your weekly or bi-weekly shopping list, and you're making the majority of your meals that consist of these foods, it's going to be one step closer in you achieving a healthier lifestyle. And I would also encourage everyone to use this time wisely to develop your cooking skills. So when I work with athletes or members of the general public, often one of the main barriers that come up is that they don't have enough time. So they don't have enough time to try and cook the meals to achieve their optimal diet. Well, now that we have time, we can use this time wisely to develop your cooking skills. So try new recipes. If I was able to give every athlete I work with one essential skill, it would be cooking skills, because it helps develop a better relationship with food. It makes the diet process a lot more easier, and they actually gain a better understanding of the food. So they understand it in the importance of nutrition, and they understand it in terms of recovery as well. And I recently purchased this book by Daniel Davey. So he's also a sport nutritionist, and he works with Leinster Rugby, and he works with Dublin GAA. Within that book, there's over 100 recipes, and they don't require much ingredients. They're pretty easy to make, and they're tailored to whatever you plan on doing that day. So let's say you had a high intensity day. Well, there's meals in there that are tailored to that day to make sure you're well fueled up and you're recovering well. And there's also meals there for low intensity day, which the majority of people will probably be having just due to the current situation, because we're not keeping as active. And it's also important now to remind everyone to make sure we're keeping on top of our hand hygiene, not just during cooking, but in other areas of the day, just due to the current situation. So making sure we're washing thoroughly for around 20 seconds. That can even be with soap and water if you don't have hand sanitizer, just to make sure we're keeping on top of our hand hygiene. So we've talked about the consequences that come with inactivity and the importance of keeping on top of our diet and our training. Then need to discuss what key nutrition strategies then can we then implement to make sure we improve or maintain our body composition. So like we touched on at the start, what I mean by body composition is maximizing or at least maintaining our muscle mass and reducing the amount of fat that we do gain. So the first strategy I'm going to discuss will be key nutrition strategies we can implement that are going to maximize muscle building. And then when I go on to discuss key nutrition strategies to minimize weight gain, that's only going to be directly applicable to anyone who's 17 and above. Because if you're 17 and below, although your exercise needs are reduced, you still have needs for growth and development. So it's really important that we're not cutting back on any food group and we're still fueling for growth and development. Because if we cut back too much, that can compromise things like bone health and also growth and development. But that's a separate workshop in and itself. But if anyone has any questions in relation to the differences between adults and youth and the consequences of making weight, well, then they can pop it into the chat and I'll answer as many as I can towards the end. So protein is going to be the main food group that we need to place focus on when it comes to maximizing or at least maintaining muscle mass. It's going to help build muscle, but it's also going to help repair our muscle. So whatever exercise we are doing, protein is going to help repair our muscle so we're able to go again whenever we are training again, whether it be that day or the next day. And it's also really going to be beneficial for our immune systems. So like I touched on, I'm going to discuss key nutrition strategies at the second half of the presentation that are going to be beneficial for our immune system to help keep us healthy during this time. And if you're a boxer, the reason why you want muscle mass is because it's going to improve your strength, your power, and your explosiveness in the gym and also on fight night. But also for the parents and the coaches who are watching, as we get older, we tend to see a rapid decrease in our body's ability to hold on to muscle, which is called sarcopenia. And that's what you can tend to see it with elderly. When they fall, they're more susceptible to breaks because they don't have the muscle to protect them. So protein and muscle is not going to be just beneficial for performance, but it's also going to be really beneficial for health. So there's a number of high protein foods and drinks that you should be looking to consume regularly throughout the day. So in the form of chicken, eggs, milk, and also different types of fish, so your tuna and your salmon. So regularly throughout the day, at each meal and each snack, your meal should be consistent of a good source of protein. And protein is also important, specifically during self-isolation, because we touched on with physical inactivity. The main way we build muscle is through weight training and protein, but because we're not doing as much resistance exercise as we normally would, we're not getting that stimulus on the muscle. So then we need to place greater emphasis on protein to make sure we're holding on to that muscle. Protein also has a high satiety rate, so that basically means it keeps you fuller for longer, so you're less likely to overeat, and your body will actually burn more calories compared to protein, compared to carbohydrates and fat when trying to digest protein, because it's pretty hard to digest. So your body actually burns calories, which can increase your overall calorie expenditure for that day, and that can contribute to your fat loss goals. And it's also going to be really beneficial for our immune system, like we had mentioned. And it's actually been shown even 1 week of reducing your step count can impair your body's ability to build muscle. So what they done, they got subjects that typically walk for 13,000 steps a day, and they reduced it right down to 1,000 steps. And just after 1 week, they seen a 27% decrease in the body's ability to build muscle. So it's not just important to do the body weight exercise in and around the house and have a high dietary protein intake, but it's really important that we increase our step count as much as possible throughout the day. I know this graph looks a bit complicated, but this is just what happens when we feed protein in relation to muscle building and muscle breaking down. So if you can see across the middle of the screen, we have the blue arrow. Below it, we've got muscle breaking down, and then above it, we have got muscle building. So let's say we feed 25 grams of protein. We have a good source of protein, so 3 to 4 eggs at breakfast. You'll see muscle building goes up, so it goes above the blue line, and then it starts to dip back down after 3 to 4 hours. And then we feed protein again, muscle building goes up, and that's a cyclical pattern throughout the day. So what happens is if we feed protein but don't feed for long periods at a time, what happens is our muscle will start to break down. So let's say we don't have a source of protein for a snack or for lunch, our muscle will break down throughout the day. So that's why it's important to regularly feed with a good source of protein from milk, chicken, tuna, salmon regularly throughout the day to make sure our muscles are constantly building. And this is just the same graph with the addition of resistance exercise. So like we touched on, the two main things to build muscle or at least maintain it in this situation is going to be resistance exercise and dietary protein intake. So let's say you've done some body weight exercises that's put on the Ulster boxing page, and you've done that 2 to 3 times a week, and you combine that with dietary protein intake, well, you'll see muscle building goes way up. So it's elevated and then it dips back down. So if we're doing that consistently throughout the day, that's going to result in, over the course of weeks and months, us building muscle, or again, at least maintaining in this situation. So then we move on to carbohydrates, and this is where we start to discuss dietary strategies that we can use to minimize fat gain. So carbohydrates are going to be our main fuel source for exercise. So carbohydrates to our body is like fuel to a car. So essentially, the more we put in, the further we can go. But because we're not as active as what we normally would be, there's no real need for as much carbohydrates. So what we can do is strategically manipulate carbohydrates in a way that we can base them around our workout, but in other areas of the day, we might look to reduce because there's no real need. But again, this is only going to be directly applicable to anyone who's 17 and above. If you're younger than that, then we still should be looking to consume carbohydrates at each meal and each snack, because we still have those needs for growth and development. But what I will go on to in a few slides' time is educating you on the right types of carbohydrates to eat. And again, it's just a graph emphasizing of when carbohydrates are used. So you can see at the bottom left, we've got low intensity exercise. And then if you look at that dark blue arrow, that's the amount of fat that you're burning. So as we're sitting here now, talking or even walking, you're predominantly burning fat. Now, it's not body fat per se, it's just your energy stores of fat. And then as you can see, as exercise intensity increases, we predominantly start to use carbohydrates. So again, because we're not as active when we're not undertaking as much high intensity exercise as what we normally would outside of self-isolation, there's not as much need for carbohydrates outside our training. So some examples of high carbohydrate foods would be the likes of cereals, so bran flakes, rice, your Lucozade, flapjack, brown bread. You've got milkshake up there, Haribo, sweet potato, potatoes, pasta, dried fruit, and white bread. Now, I know the majority of you are probably looking at that thinking, well, I would view some of those foods quote unquote healthy and some of those foods not so healthy. And the reason for this is because there's two main types of carbohydrates. There's what we call fast release and there's what we call slow release. So fast release tend to be higher than sugar. So like the Haribo that you just seen. So they would give you a quick increase in energy, but they would give you a quick decrease in energy. And then you've got slow release, which are going to give you a slow, steady release of energy over the course of the day. And these are the types of food that you want to be focusing on, the types of carbohydrate, because they're going to be high in fiber. So it's going to help keep us fuller for longer. So we're less likely to overeat. And also, if you're 17 and below, you still want to be consuming those slow release at every meal and snack, because fiber is also going to be beneficial for our immune system. So it's going to keep us really healthy during this time. So some examples of slow release would be the likes of sweet potato, the likes of muesli, oats, brown bread, and rice. So think of wholemeal products and whole grain, and also your fruit and your veg. So these are the types of foods you want to be included in the meals and snacks throughout the day, and they're going to give you a slow, steady release of energy throughout the day, and also going to be really beneficial for your immune system. And because we are reducing carbohydrates, we need to compensate for that with another food group. So this is a typical plate model you would see in a high performance environment. So these two plate models are actually displayed in the canteen in Everton. So on a hard training day, you can see that they've got a source of protein, they've got carbs, and they've got veg, roughly a third of the plate each. But on a light training day, which the majority of people will be doing, or in other areas of the day where they're not as active, then we can reduce our intake of carbohydrates as a good way to reduce overall calories. But we need to compensate that. And a good way to compensate it is to increase our veg intake on our plate. Because veg is low in calories, but like we touched on, like slow release, it's going to be high in fiber. So it's going to help keep us fuller for longer. And obviously it's going to be really beneficial for immune systems. Veg is going to keep us healthy. So we've talked about key nutrition strategies that we can implement to make sure we're maintaining our muscle mass, and key nutrition strategies that we can implement to make sure we're not putting on too much weight. So now we're going to go on to nutrition strategies we can use to maintain our immune system. And what we basically mean by that is what nutrition strategies we can implement to prevent us getting upper respiratory tract infections, which is just a fancy term for things like the common cold, tonsillitis, and laryngitis. And when athletes tend to pick up common colds, this can often disrupt training and it can lead to underperformance. So what nutrition strategies can we then implement to make sure that we're not getting sick and we're not missing training? So the first and most important thing would be to make sure we're having a high fruit and veg intake. So I would recommend consuming around 5 to 7 portions of fruit and veg each day. And you would try and get different colors. So aim for a rainbow. And the reason for that is because the different colors contain a variety of different vitamins and minerals. So it's going to prevent us from getting deficient in anything and make sure we're keeping healthy. The second most important thing would be keeping on top of your hydration. When we are dehydrated, we're not producing saliva, and saliva contains key antibodies which help fight off infection. So if we're keeping on top of our hydration, we're able to fight off those illnesses, infection, and we're able to keep healthy. And a good indicator to show that you are hydrated is to just monitor your urine color throughout the day. So the darker it is, the more dehydrated you are. And then the lighter it is, the more hydrated you are. And that's especially important around workout. Probiotics is another really important one. So probiotics rich food and supplements contain what's known as good bacteria. And they have a positive impact on your immune system. And they can help reduce the chances of you picking up things like the common cold. And probiotics are found in several foods, particularly dairy products such as milk, yogurt, and cheese. But unfortunately, within these products, they usually contain low concentrations of probiotics. So people often look to consume foods and drinks that contain added probiotics. And what you should be looking for, I'm not too sure if you can see it in the right-hand corner of the screen, is the number 10 with a small 10, and then CFU, which is basically colony forming units. So that's enough probiotics each day to maintain sufficiency. And to put that into perspective, a Yakult, one of the drinks you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, contains 6.5 billion. So if we can consume 2 of them a day, that's going to be enough to maintain sufficiency and make sure we're protecting our immune systems. Vitamin D is also one of the most important ones. So we get the majority of vitamin D from sunlight. And vitamin D is going to protect us from picking up anything like the common cold or tonsillitis. Tonsillitis, and it's also going to be really beneficial for our bone health. And unfortunately, in the UK and Ireland, a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D because we don't get enough sunlight. So it's something to consider during the winter months. And I would recommend supplementing with around 1,000 to 2,000 international units during that winter period. And that's going to be enough to maintain sufficiency. But only supplement if you're working with a qualified nutritionist. So if you're considering supplementing, I would recommend seeking advice from a qualified nutritionist, and they'll deem if it's necessary. Because if we take a supplement, let's say off the website, that might not be tested and screened for prohibited substances, that can often result in a failed drug test, which we'll come on to in a few slides' time. So it's really, really important to seek advice from a qualified nutritionist before supplement, because it's always a food first approach. Sleep is probably the most important one, and the last one I'll touch on in terms of improving our immune systems. And it's recommended that we get around 8 hours of sleep each night. And 2 out of every 3 adults actually fail to obtain this. And it's becoming so much of an issue that the World Health Organization has declared a sleep loss epidemic in industrialized nations. So places like the UK, USA, Japan, and South Korea. And it's no coincidence that within those countries, they're seeing a rapid decrease in sleep time, but they're seeing a rapid increase in things like cardiovascular diseases. Also, if we lose sleep, let's say we get 4 hours, that can decrease our body's natural killer cells. And natural killer cells are basically, their job is to fight off infections. So let's say we got 4 hours of sleep. Well, it actually showed that subjects who got 4 hours of sleep, these natural killer cells were decreased by 70%. So you're really, really compromising your immune system and making your body more susceptible to picking up those illnesses and infections, which is the last thing we want, because if we're sick, we're not able to train and we're not able to get better. In terms of diet, insufficient sleep has also been shown to increase your hunger hormone ghrelin. So the next day, if our ghrelin is increased, our hunger hormone, we're more likely to overeat, which again can lead to weight gain, and that can come in between us and us achieving our goals, especially for boxers who are looking to maintain weight. So some tips to improve sleep would be to try to get consistent bed and wake times. So go to bed at the same time each night and wake up at the same time each morning. Try and open your window and expose yourself to sunlight throughout the day. Try and stay physically active while self-isolated, because this is going to actually help promote sleep. Because if you're fatigued and you're a bit tired from exercise, you should fall asleep easier. Try and avoid phones or iPod or laptops before bed, because what happens is they have what's called blue light, and blue light can actually impair your ability to fall asleep. And try to avoid spending too much time in your room. So you don't want your body to basically associate your bedroom with wakefulness. So if you're doing any work around the house or exercise, make sure it's out of the bedroom and only go to the bedroom and stay in bed when it's sleep time. So we just want to now touch on commonly used supplements to boost immunity. So what we discussed on in previous slides were the evidence-based nutrition strategies that are going to maintain immunity. So now I just want to move on to the commonly promoted supplements that are thought to boost immunity that I'm constantly seeing advertised. And I just want to say, first of all, that you can't actually boost immunity. You can maintain it and prevent it from becoming deficient, but what you can't do is boost it any further. So I just want to talk about these supplements and strategies in relation to their safety and their effectiveness. And the first one would be vitamin C. And it's actually been shown that taking vitamin C around 0.25 to 1 grams per day showed a 50% decrease in upper respiratory tract infections in heavy exercisers. But the majority of people that I see taking vitamin C tend to take it at the onset of the cold, hoping that it's going to reduce the severity and duration and basically get rid of the cold. And there is some studies to show that that is beneficial. However, within those studies, they use doses of around 6 to 8 grams of vitamin C. And again, to put that into perspective, vitamin C supplements are usually sold in tablet form, and they usually contain around 500 milligrams. So in order to take that, you would have to take around 6 to 12 tablets or even more to get that benefit from it. So it's not really practical. And the caveat as well that comes with taking vitamin C supplementation is that it actually blunts the adaptations you get from training. So when we train, our body comes under stress. So the muscle creates something that's called oxidative stress. And vitamin C, because that's an antioxidant, people think that it's a good thing to take to try and get rid of that stress. But it's actually known now that we need that stress in the recovery process. That's essential for us to then adapt and get better from the training. So what I would recommend is just get in the vitamin C from food, because like we touched on previously, it's always a food first approach. So things like oranges, orange juice, your bell peppers, and also your sweet potato. Zinc, again, is also one that I'm commonly seeing advertised. And there's actually been no evidence to show that zinc prevents an upper respiratory tract infection in athletes. And high doses can actually have a negative impact on your immune system. So again, you're more likely to get sick from it. So supplements should be avoided. However, there is strong evidence to show that taking zinc lozenges, so around 75 milligrams a day of elemental zinc at the onset of the cold, so when the cold first starts, can actually reduce the duration. However, like we touched on previously, I would only take a zinc supplement if you're working with a qualified nutritionist. Again, it's always a food first approach. So I would recommend at the minute just getting the zinc from food in the form of beans, nuts and seeds, and also red meat. Herbal supplements as well, I'm commonly seeing advertised, in particular garlic. And there's been actually no evidence to show that any of these herbal supplements will have a beneficial impact on your immune system or prevent you from getting the cold. And even if they did, you still couldn't recommend it because unfortunately the supplement industry isn't as tightly regulated as the pharmaceutical industry. So herbal supplements often contain prohibited substances, which can often result in a failed drug test. So they can have things within the product that aren't actually stated on the label. So I would avoid herbal supplements at all costs. And while we're on the topic of herbal supplements, I just want to touch on CBD oil over the next few slides because CBD oil has become increasingly popular over the past number of years. And I get a lot of questions around it in relation to, is it safe? Is it effective in relation to athletic performance? So over the next few slides, I just want to discuss what is the evidence behind CBD oil and is it safe in terms of an anti-doping perspective. And yesterday I just typed in CBD oil benefits into Google just to see what would come up because like everyone uses Google, even I use Google, but where people fall down is that they rely on the first bit of information that appears on Google. And often this information isn't always credible. So that's why it's really, really important that if we are thinking about taking what even a food or a certain supplement, it's really, really important that we seek qualified advice because you can't expect athletes or the general public to always dig into the research to see what's evidence-based and which is not. But that's why there's qualified nutritionists out there who would do that for you. But in relation to the benefits that appear, there's actually no studies that have been done on athletes to show that CBD oil has a beneficial effect, whether that be anxiety, whether that be sleep, or whether that be muscle recovery or muscle soreness. And I also get questions about whether it's safe or not. And again, this is where it can get a bit confusing because in 2018, the World Anti-Doping Agency actually took CBD oil off their prohibited list. So it's no longer banned. But what is banned is THC. And THC is the psychoactive component, which is found in cannabis. So CBD oil isn't banned, but THC is. So where do they come together? Well, all the CBD oil products that are sold within the UK contain some amount of THC. So if you're taking a CBD oil supplement, you run the risk of basically failing a drug test and an anti-doping rule violation if your drug test and THC is actually found in your bloodstream. And this actually happened last year with the US ski athlete, Devin Logan, who failed the drug test because THC was found in their drug test, and that was down to taking CBD oil. So again, avoid CBD oil for an athlete at all costs because you run the risk of an anti-doping rule violation and you're going to ruin your chances of getting to things like the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics because you're going to get a 4-year ban from your sport. And just on supplements, like we said, it's always a food first approach. There's not much you can't get from food that you're going to get from supplements. But sometimes we need to take supplements to rectify any deficiencies within the diet. But this is only the case if you're working with a qualified nutritionist who deems it necessary to actually take a supplement. And if we are taking one, we need to make sure they're informed sport tested. So they have the logo on the right hand of the screen, the top right hand corner. They should have that in the back of their product. And in addition to that, we need to make sure that we actually go on Informed Sport website and go that one step further. And what happens is, if you order a supplement, let's say off a company Sands in Sport, they test all their products for prohibited substances. Well, when you get that supplement, what will happen is they'll give you a batch number on top of the product. Just take that batch number, go on the Informed Sport website, type in that batch number, and that'll come up whether that supplement has been tested or not. And I know I mentioned that the pharmaceutical industry is more tightly regulated than the supplement industry. Well, when it comes to medication, we actually still need to make sure that the medication we are taking is cleared, even something as simple as hay fever tablet that athletes never really think of. So Global Drow, that's where that website comes into it. What you do is you go on the Global Drow website, you choose your sport, so let's say boxing, and then you type in your medication, and that'll come up whether that's prohibited or not. But ultimately, like I can't keep emphasizing, it's a food first approach. But if you're working with a nutritionist and they deem it necessary, so they'll assess the need. So is there a need? Do we need to rectify any deficiencies, for example, vitamin D? Then we need to assess the risk. What are the risks that come with it? So we touched on some supplements can actually contain prohibited substances. And then we need to assess the consequences. So what are the consequences? Well, the consequences are that I could fail a drug test and get a 4-year ban from the sport, and it could ruin my chances of getting to the Olympic Games or getting to the Commonwealth Games. And I just want to finish off with a clip from Sean McComb, who's a boxer I work with. And he came up through the same system as the majority of boxers who are watching. And he was a really successful amateur. And I just want to show this clip of how he values nutrition.
138 pounds being the first thing you fought under 140 as a professional anyway. I know you're probably 6 weeks away from the fight, but what have you changed in your training in terms of nutrition and the way you train? Have you changed anything much?
Not really. Nutrition's always been. I mean, we do the full tests with the nutrition Stephen. He does, books me in for the RMR, the rest of the metabolic rate. Does my calorie counts and then all the food that he's sending me, like every day, is tailored around my training. So the food's good and it's under the calorie deficit, but it's based for training, it's for recovery, it's muscle recovery, it's everything. It's not just about losing weight, it's all about getting that 1% out of every training session. And I believe nutrition is a big key factor in that.
So that's Sean McComb, like I said, who was a very successful amateur and one of the biggest prospects in Ireland at the minute. And he's emphasising the point that nutrition is not just about making weight, it's about recovery, it's about adapting to training, and it's about getting that 1% better each day. So to summarise, while self-isolating, it is vital boxers maintain a healthy, balanced diet to help support their immune function, whilst tailoring our nutrition in line with our activity levels to ensure body composition is maintained. And this can be achieved through a food-first approach with the addition of specific supplements if deemed necessary, following the advice of a qualified nutritionist. Once the need to supplement has been established, we then need to assess the risk and assess the consequences before choosing a supplement that has been batch tested and cleared for prohibited substances. Thanks very much for listening. If anyone has any questions, they can just pop it into the chat and I'll answer as many as I can.